Okay, I just want to do a quick video here about the latest Gwent patch or update. And I'm going to be griping a little bit here because I don't like it so much. I don't like the changes that they've made. But let me just preface this video in case I end up doing a lot of griping in this video. Let me just preface it by saying I am by no means disparaging Gwent or the Gwent development team. I love Gwent. In fact, the problem is probably that I like Gwent too much. Over the past few weeks, I've been playing a lot of Gwent. And I've been playing a lot of casual matches as well as ranked matches. And I was getting into it so much that I think I've come to the realization that I cannot personally tolerate the inevitable changes that are going to come down the pipeline here with any beta release. I spend so much time and effort, or whatever that means in a Gwent sense. I burn a lot of my mental Gwent energy on crafting my deck and getting it just right, like anybody does, I'm sure, any Gwent player. So after I go through that quote-unquote effort and they go ahead and change stuff, it's just like, it's frustrating for me, personally. And, I'm not telling anybody to stop playing Gwent. That's not what this is about. Gwent is amazing, and you should keep playing it. But anyway, the point here is that, and maybe this is my paranoia, it just feels like this update was specifically to nerf Skellige decks. And I'm sure some of you right now, all three of you who are ever going to watch this, are thinking to yourselves, good, Skellige needed to be nerfed. Well, okay, but for the longest time, I was getting my butt kicked as Skellige. And I wanted to stick with it because I like Skellige. And it's kind of got the underdog feel to it. It's a late round deck. It's the deck that I prefer. I like Skellige. In fact, if we really want to get into my personal preferences here, Skellige reminds me of the Iron Islands in the Game of Thrones universe. So, for that little gimmicky reason, I really like Skellige. So I want to stick with Skellige, and I wanted to craft an effective deck. I wanted to be, a good Skellige player. And I think I finally got there. It took a lot of time, and it took a lot of swapping cards in and out of my deck and trying to get the right mix, like I'm sure any of you out there are trying to achieve. But I finally got something that I was thinking, hey, I can enter the ranked match world and not get thoroughly humiliated and represent Skellige in a effective manner. And what do I mean by effective? Well, at the height of my success before this patch, I was one game over 500. So we're not talking about me discovering some major flaw in the Gwent system or some loophole or some unfair advantage that Skellige has that the rest of the decks do not. I mean, we're just talking about me being able to craft a competitive deck. If that's not being very charitable about my deck. I mean, one match over 500? Is that anything to crow about? Is that anything that requires significant nerfing of the Skellige deck? Okay, so to demonstrate that I had an effective or competitive deck before the patch and something drastically different after, let me show some examples here. This first match is me playing an opponent who's 20 levels higher than me. And on top of that, it's a Scoi'a'Tel opponent, and I have particular trouble with Scoi'a'Tel for whatever reason. Okay, so here I am choosing my cards. And I'll try to, for those of you who haven't seen this tactic from a Skellige opponent, let me briefly try to explain what I try to do with my Skellige deck, with the Skellige deck I've crafted. I want to go into the final round with some combination of these three cards, right? And most important, the linchpin to this strategy is that yellow bird looking card, the combi card, because that card, its a pretty effective card. What it does is you put it on your opponent's side, and in 2 rounds, it wipes out everything on the board that is not a gold card. So any weather effects, any bronze cards, any silver cards on both sides of the board are gone after that card triggers. So if I use it in conjunction with my Hjalmar card, which puts a Lord of Unvig silver card on the opponent's side, so Hjalmar's 15, Lord of Unvig is 5, so there's a positive 10 points for me if I just put it down. But if I put it down and I manage to clear Lord of Unvig off the other side, it boosts Hjalmar by 10 points. So Hjalmar becomes a 25-point card. So I use Hjalmar in conjunction with the combi card in the final round to kind of have the final say. It doesn't matter what happens in the final round, up to the point that I put down that combi card. It's all just kind of irrelevant. It's all just kind of window dressing, really, what goes on before I put down that combi card. Now, when combi triggers, like I said, it wipes everything out that's not a gold card, but it also adds a Hemdall, I hope I'm getting his name right, a Hemdall gold card to my opponent's side. So it wipes anything off both sides that is not a gold card. Because it gets rid of Lord of Unvig, it boosts Hjalmar by 10 points, so Hjalmar goes up to 25. But it also gives 11 points in a gold card form to my opponent. So if my opponent has a lot of gold cards down before I put this combi card down and they're high point cards, well, this strategy isn't very effective. So what I try to do is I try to also have, as you can see in this deal, try to also have some sort of demoting card, like Dimeridium Shackles or Dimeridium Bomb. In fact, now I have 2 Dimeridium Shackles cards in my deck, and I have the Dimeridium Bomb in my deck, so that going into the final round, if my opponent puts down a lot of gold cards, I can handle them, so to speak. Because if I demote them to silver before the combi card triggers, the combi card will wipe them off the board. Okay, so that's a lot of explanation. Let's get into this strategy in action here. So I'm just going to fast forward to the final round and we'll see how this combi card plays out. Now, this actually isn't a perfect situation for me. And as you can see, my opponent is taunting me quite often here. This isn't a perfect situation for me because I had to use Geralt already to get to this point. I had to use Geralt and my leader card to even make it to the final round. I usually don't like to do that. I like to have Geralt and my leader card for the final round to maximize the amount of points on my side of the board after the combi detonation, we'll call it. Okay, so here it goes.
Who taught you to play like this?
Okay, so here's a quick one. We'll fast forward to the final round here, where if everything goes perfectly and I wipe everything off the board, and I have Geralt, and I have my leader card, and I have Hjalmar, you can see that in the final round, if everything goes right for me, I will win 42-11. So that's like the best case scenario here. And again, this is a Scoi'a'Tel opponent. And as I'm showing you these successes, I want to remind everyone, all 3 of you who are going to watch this, that these successes were few and far between. Because again, if they weren't, I wouldn't have been 1 match over 500 winning percentage-wise at my best. So I'm cherry picking the successes here, again, to show you that I had a somewhat competitive deck before the patch. I didn't have an overwhelmingly masterful or overpowered deck before the patch. I don't want to portray that image of my deck because that wasn't reality. To further send that point home, here's a match where I only won by 2 points despite getting the near best case scenario.
A thousand thunder and sea devils!
The time has come!
So to quickly sum up the before patch state of affairs, I needed the perfect deal to be competitive with this deck, which obviously I didn't get all the time. And even if I got the perfect deal, there was no guarantee that I was going to win because something could happen where I was going into the final round at a card deficit and my opponent could beat me, despite combi wiping out everything that my opponent had put on the board before the detonation. Okay, so again, that was the state of affairs before the patch. In fact, most of those matches I just showed you, I believe, were the very night before the patch was released. And here are the details of the patch as far as Skellige is concerned anyway. Obviously, other decks were affected, but it's my opinion that none of those decks were affected to the degree that Skellige was. And in fact, if you want to go check out the patch, if you play Gwent, I think what you do once you sign on to Gwent, you scroll all the way over to the right, past your deck builder, past the shop, you go all the way over to settings, I believe it is, and somewhere in that tab, somewhere in that selection, you'll see the patch details and you can browse them and see what happened with other decks. But it seems to me that most of the other decks did get nerfed. They mostly got point increases for individual cards, but you can go check it out for yourself and determine whether or not my claim there is accurate on your own. So again, getting back to the Skellige specific update, the important bits are outlined here in red, so let's go over them. The ability to boost Llamar was moved to Lord of Unvik. The boost will now come from his card. I don't fully understand this change because, as far as I know, it was always the case that the boost came from the Lord of Unvik. If you put down Llamar, he goes on your side, and he used to be. We'll get to his new point rating, which is right below this bullet. He used to be 15 points, so you put down Lord of Unvik you put down Llamar on your side, got 15 points, then Lord of Unvik appeared on your opponent's side at 5 points, so it was, again, a net 10 points for you. And if you had the means to discard Lord of Unvik, I don't know, if you used Triss, used her 5-point hit ability, or if Lord of Unvik happened to be the highest non-gold card on the board, you could use Scorch. There's a number of ways to knock him off the board. But if you did that, then you bumped Llamar up 10 points. So he went from 15 to 25 points. So I don't fully understand what they're saying here, that the boost will now come from his card. It seems to me that it was always coming from his card, but maybe somebody can explain to me in the comments what I'm missing here, and why I'm being a knucklehead and not understanding what they're getting at here. Okay, so the next one is the more crucial bit. Hjalmar's power changed from 15 to 13. Now, as you can tell from one of the example matches I showed you, this would have been critical because I won by 2 points. So now it would have been a tie. And, you know, that match wouldn't have been an outright victory. Or maybe, you know, if my opponent had 1 more point, it would have been a loss. So that may not sound like much, knocking him down from 15 to 13, but that could be critical for a Skellige deck player. And the really important bit is the next bullet that's outlined in red. Heimdall's power changed from 11 to 16. So that combined with Hjalmar going down 2 points after the combi card detonates, that is like a 7-point loss. It's not like a 7-point loss, it is a 7-point loss for my strategy here in the final round. And I think technically, I say the combi card is the one that wipes out the bronze and silver cards on both sides of the board and clears the weather and all that. Technically speaking, I think combi just releases Heimdall, who does all that. So it's really Heimdall that clears the board of everything except for the gold cards. But whatever. I mean, does it really matter? Now, you may not think that that's much of a big deal, but I'm going to show you a couple post-patch matches here where it made all the difference in the world. And it left me with a deck that is no longer competitive, a deck that I can no longer even think about getting to 1 match over 500 winning percentage-wise on the leaderboard. Here's one that ended in a tie because of the new point adjustments to Hjalmar and Heimdall, and which easily could have ended in a loss for me had my opponent had 1 more card or some such.
My lords, to your palace! The time has come!
And here's one that ended in a flat-out loss for me due to the new values for Heimdall and Hjalmar.
Bow before modern Freya.
You've got the heart, not grit. Into the fray!
Out with the crowns. Come on, quick now. Let's get this over with.
What is it?
We serve her who is virgin, mother, and crone. Just great.
The goddess protect you from all evil! A thousand thunder and sea devils!
Enough gob flopping.
Now my opponent made an intelligent play and locked the Lord of Unvik card so that Hjalmar didn't go up 10 points and become 23. And maybe that's what that first patch bullet for Skellige was indicating, because I don't remember any of my opponents doing that, locking Lord of Unvik and thwarting the Hjalmar point raise. But it doesn't matter because he only won by 5 points. If we were back before the patch, Hemdall would have only been 11 points and Hjalmar would have been 15 points. So that would have been 7 points for me and I would have won. Okay, so to sum up here quickly, I'm not going to scoop up all my Gwent marbles and storm off in a huff. But I do think the greater nerfing of Skellige was unfair in this patch and really uncalled for. I don't think there was any need for it. Now, its genesis was probably people who, like a lot of Gwent players, try to keep their cards for the final round, their best cards, and unload their best strategy in the final round because, you know, now it's showtime. The first 2 rounds, you can kind of play around a little bit. You have 2 chances to win 1, and then just get yourself to the final round where it really becomes serious. So if you saved all your best cards for that final round, and somebody still beat you 42-11, which was the best case scenario for me before the patch, and who knows, maybe some of these people actually did play me, or played somebody else like me who has a Skellige deck who uses the same tactic. and then complained to the Gwent development team about it because they felt like they went into the final round with their best chance to win and they got torched, sort of almost literally, with the combi and Hemdall card burning everything off the board. So I get it. That probably seemed very frustrating to them, and they thought it was unfair, and they thought Skellige was overpowered, but they're not really seeing the bigger picture here that I saw, that even with that gimmick, I'm still in a best case leaderboard scenario. I'm still only one match over 500. Because again, the deal really determines whether or not you even get to play this gimmick in the final round. Alright, I'm not going to storm off from Gwent forever, but I think I need to let the Gwent development team get closer to some final value system for the Gwent cards, because it's frustrating to me to make the effort to put the best deck out there and then for a patch to come and undermine my best efforts. So I need to let them get as close as they can. I know Gwent's never going to be finalized, but I need to let them get as close as they can to that final fair Gwent mix. And then I'm going to dive back into the fray and work on my deck and try to make a competitive deck. Right now, it just doesn't seem like the effort is going to pay off. In fact, the effort's probably going to backfire if they release a patch like this. So anyway, hopefully all that made sense, and hopefully all that was interesting, and I know you didn't need to know why Planet Evans disappeared from the Gwent world for a while, but I think I needed to just make this video to put it out there that there really wasn't a need to nerf Skellige so severely. And that's it. That's all I want to say. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.